Here's another one that was suggested to me, and this one is called, let's bring it up here, A World Without Racism. The story of Lanier Phillips. And I do believe it has something to do with the Second World War, maybe? I'm not sure, but we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. Welcome to Mr. Giants Reacts to Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant. Let's get into this video here.
We end our program with this story in which us and them are reversed. All the people who should be on the side of the man in the story are actually against him. And all the foreigners who might be bad to him actually treat him like one of their own. Chris Brooks put the story together.
Right where he came out of. That's the bridge right off, see?
I'm driving through the small town of St. Lawrence, Newfoundland, Canada. It's about 300 miles from where I live myself. The population is 1,697, according to that road sign. It's on the edge of a boot of rock that sticks right out into the North Atlantic shipping lanes. When you see this place on the map, it looks like a big foot waiting to trip unwary sailors.
Now just keep on going.
The person giving me directions here is Ina Edwards. She's kind of the unofficial St. Lawrence historian.
You turn left up here by the stop sign.
Okay.
You see the high school's down there.
Newfoundland is a place that some mainland Canadians like to make jokes about. They imagine that we're an island of some kind of naive fisher folk. And actually, naive isn't the right word. Stupid is what they think we are. And the jokes they tell about us are called Newfie jokes. You know, how many of us does it take to screw in a light bulb? That kind of thing. And when I first heard this story, it was in that kind of a context. A funny story about isolated Newfoundlanders just too naive to know what would have been obvious to most other people in North America. But lately, I found out the rest of the story. And it wasn't a joke at all.
Getting close to it.
Where Ina's taking me here is to the new school playground. But the playground is really the end of this story. The beginning of it is 3,000 miles south of here, all the way down in DeKalb County, Georgia.
This is getting interesting.
If you step in here, I'll show you. That's St. Lawrence.
That photograph.
Yeah, that's St. Lawrence. And this is here's my grandmother, great-grandmother and grandfather, who were born slaves. Well, I'm Lanier Phillips. I was born March 14th, 1923. And I live in DeKalb County. And DeKalb County didn't finish schools for black people until 1939. They didn't want the blacks to have any kind of education. Then they had the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan. And they instilled fear in the black people. At least they tried. And I know they had fear into me from 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
And I would go up the railroad track and see them come down Main Street marching every Saturday night. They would march. And then at other times they would be on this truck and they would fire a shot in the air or something like that. And I knew which way they were going. When they crossed the railroad track, if they kept going straight, I knew they was going to a place called Smoker Road, predominantly black. Well, it was all black. But if they made a right turn, I knew they was coming down to what we call Bruce's Alley, where I live. And I'd take off like a jackrabbit and tell people they're coming. And everybody would put the lamps out. They didn't have electricity. But they did. They did some terrible things.
Wow, I cannot imagine living like that. Just can't imagine it because I came from a country where the leaders were black, lawyers, doctors, teachers, everybody was black, you know what I mean? Now, to a certain degree, we did it to ourselves because, you know, political stuff where you have the government having what you call secret police, you know, terrorizing people. But not that type of terrorization that African Americans seem to have went through. Now, Here's something ironic. I did witness a Ku Klux Klan rally once. They marched to this small town. I'm not going to name the place, but I can't say it was like a step back into the old days or anything like that because I never experienced anything like that. But it's kind of like what Hollywood did to the Germans. Like you hear them marching and stuff, and they showing the sinister nature of them mainly, sort of dehumanizing them. But in turn, they were dehumanizing others. It's sort of the same thing, and the anger steeped in fear, I think, you know what I mean? A fear of losing power, more so for the Ku Klux Klan, and I guess to a certain extent the Nazis at the time. But I guess I should have been more afraid, but I wasn't because I didn't experience that before then. And this was like in the early 1990s, man. This wasn't like 50 years ago. This was like 1990s, and they were marching and yelling and screaming, and that was a surreal thing, because other than that, I saw it in documentaries, and I saw it in the movies. I think the difference is they weren't going to terrorize people, but when you come to think of it, where they were marching, there weren't any black people there. As a matter of fact, I remember going through that town, and people, me and my ex-wife, we went through that town to go to where she lived, where she's from. Where she's from, at the time, there were even less black people. I think I was the only one for miles that was there. But I remember going through that town one day, and we stopped at a McDonald's, and I remember a couple of old ladies came up and asked us, "You're not going to move in here, are you?" I mean, and of course, me being naive to the situation because I'd pretty much just gotten into America. It was like 4 years after I came to America, not understanding the history of it. Just being an observer of it in documentaries and movies, like I said. I didn't really feel afraid. Even though before that I had experienced being chased by people shouting the N-word at me, driving through the little town where I went to college to begin with, screaming "die and die." And even then, I guess when you're young, you feel invincible, and of course, too, not really understanding what was going on at the time. I don't think I felt any fear. As a matter of fact, I was more afraid of the cops than over these people for some reason. But I understand to a certain degree now the fear that brought to people, knowing why they come in and what they're going to do. Let's keep watching it and see what it is, the atrocities, if that is described here. Let's keep going.
Black people had a chance to build a school themselves. They called Yellow River. 3 counties, Rockdale, Gwinnett County, and DeKalb County got together and built this school. But the Ku Klux Klan burned the school down, Yes, sir, they burned. I remember that clear. I can close my eyes and see the flames going, standing and watching the school burn, and listen to the grown-ups, say, they'll never let us learn and let our children learn to read. I saw no future. I had no dreams because only thing I could say, well, maybe I'll be a sharecropper or something, once I grew up. So I said, I think I'll join the Navy. So in 41, I joined the Navy. Well, they had blacks in one place and whites in another. And blacks better not, interfere, go down to the whites, showers, bathroom, or anything like that. And the blacks on board ship, they could only be mess attendants, serving and taking what they call taking care of your officer. You were assigned a certain amount of officers. You kept his shoes shine, his clothing, ready, and his room clean. And you'd be out for 30 days or more. You had to wash those officers' underwear.
Wow. Imagine being a grown man washing another man's underwear.
Well, in the convoys, we had a lot of merchant ships, and we would escort them up to Iceland, and then the British would take over the convoy and take them on into England. And the home port was Boston. As soon as we left Boston, it was storming, and we joined up off Halifax. I thought we were heading for Iceland. I said, well, I won't get off the ship until we get back to the States, because the previous trip had been to Iceland, and no blacks could go ashore there because they had some agreement with America that they would never let a black man put foot in Iceland. And they had the same agreement in Morocco with Port Lyote. They had a base there, and they said no Jew could ever,
Wow.
And then that was the agreement. And that's the way it was. That's the way it was.
My maiden name was Farrell, which I kept after I married, so I'm Ina Farrell Edwards. And at the time of the disaster in 1942, February the 18th, in St. Lawrence, it was Ash Wednesday, and a ferocious storm, real blizzard.
I heard the EXO, the executive officer, tell the captain, say, this is going to be a rough one.
I'm Gus Etchegary. I was about 16 and a half in 1942. Just finished high school in St. Lawrence. It was a hell of a storm. There's no doubt about it at all. I don't know what the estimate of the winds would be, but it had the full strife of the Atlantic.
And I guess many people said, maybe it was even said in our house, what a dreadful night. We pitied poor sailors on the sea tonight.
Truxton had no radar. So what they did was relying on dead reckoning.
Before they knew it, they were right into the cliff. Bang.
I thought we had been torpedoed. I didn't know what. I was in my bed when it hit. Down I came. I had all my clothes on. I had my life jacket. And I grabbed a pair of shoes. I didn't know if it was mine or what. And went topside. Well, it was dark. And it was storming. I mean, it was picking the Truxton up. It looked like to slam it against a rock. And you could hear the steel grinding. Then when day began to break, all you could see was the cliffs and the rocks. And it just picked the ship up and down it would go and began to wash the fellows overboard. I almost got washed over 2 or 3 times, but I grabbed the lifeline and hold on.
Wow.
At about 7:30 in the morning, my father called and in a somewhat frantic voice said, get down here as quick as you can, get a hold of the driver of that pickup truck, load up all the ropes and lines that you could find in the area, and get down to Chambers Cove.
The ship had begun to take on so much water. We knew it was, going to sink. They had said that no man could live in the water more than 5 minutes because of the cold.
As we came up over the hill and looked down, here 300 feet or so below, right in the middle of a sort of a horseshoe cove, this destroyer, this Truxton, partly submerged, but the full length of the rail was still above water. All these people hanging on, if you like, to dear life on the rail. Some were just swept up on those jagged cliffs, and then you tumble down and so on. It was a pretty dreadful sight.
About this time,
Okay, that ended abruptly. That ends part one of this Mr. Phillips story. Look forward to the second part coming up. All right. Uh, so far, quite interesting. Kind of left it at a cliffhanger there to see what's going to come next. Of course, it's part of history, so a lot of people probably know what's going to happen, but I don't. So we'll be watching part two here shortly. Okay. Uh, I'm gonna leave links in the description here so that you can keep watching other historical stories and stuff like that, and other history videos that I'm putting up on here. And I so hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. So look out for part two coming up. Y'all take care of each other, all right? Cool runnings.